Hello learners, this is Dr. Biplab Jamatia, Associate Professor, School of Health Sciences, IGNOU, and your course coordinator for this course on lifestyle and non-communicable diseases. You have already learned about the various nutrient and the food groups in the previous lessons. Let us now talk about healthy eating habits. We have with us Dr. Seema Puri, retired professor, Department of Food and Nutrition, Institute of Home Economics, University of Delhi. Welcome, Dr. Seema Puri. We are eager to know more about the healthy eating habits from you.
Thank you, Dr. Biplab. So for today's session, our objectives would be I'll be explaining the guidelines for healthy eating, describe what mindless eating is, explaining the deviations in dietary recommendations in special groups. We will also be discussing the benefits of local, seasonal and traditional foods. And I would also be highlighting how to read and interpret food labels.
There is so much of advice from friends, family, internet, and all kind of sources. Are there any standard or recommended guidelines that can be referred?
Yes, of course. ICMR NIN has formulated the food-based dietary guidelines for Indians. They are also available on the ICMR website. But as you can see here, this is a My Plate, which the ICMR NIN has recommended for an adult. There are different amounts for different age groups. And as you can see here, the plate has been divided into fruits and vegetables, which is about 400 plus 100 grams. There's cereals, which is about 250 grams, some amount of oil, 27 grams, pulses and animal foods, etc., which comes to about 85 grams and about 300 ml of milk. So this is for a 2000 calorie diet for an adult man. And there are variations depending upon the different age groups.
Is there necessary to consume 4 to 5 different vegetables and fruit every day for adult individual?
Yes, because ICMR has said that we need to consume 400 to 500 grams of fruits and vegetables every day. So what is important is to eat 4 different colored fruits and vegetables every day. So it's, something green, something yellow, something orange. And out of these, at least 2 vegetables and fruits should be green leafy vegetables or yellow, orange or citrus fruits, because these have more phytonutrients and more minerals and vitamins. As far as possible, we should eat them raw and avoid excessive cooking, especially of vegetables, because it leads to loss of nutrients. And those which are grown locally and which are in season would be more nutritious. And therefore, we should prefer those rather than looking at exotic vegetables which are not grown in that area and are imported from different parts of the world in the country. They would not be as nutritious as those which are grown in your own area.
So how does a daily intake of vegetable help to keep us healthy?
Vegetables and fruits belong to a group which is called protective foods. And these, because they contain a lot of minerals, vitamins, and some natural phytochemicals like antioxidants, free radical scavengers and all. So they help in protecting the body from infections. They strengthen our immune system. And since you are all working in the area of non-communicable diseases, I would also like to highlight that it has been established that they reduce the risk of heart disease, stroke, hypertension, diabetes, and even a high fruit and vegetable intake it lowers the risk of certain cancers.
So is it like limit of the use of fat in the diet every day is recommended?
Yes, fat is fats and oils, I would say, which is both available from plant and animal sources, and we need to restrict these in our diet. The animal foods, which like the red meat, will contain higher levels of fat as compared to, say, fish, but certain fatty fish would also be high in fat, and we need to restrict the intake of these fats in our diet.
There are lots of talk going on about the fats, and is it really true that there is something called visible and invisible fats?
Yes, Because as I mentioned, animal foods, you cannot see the fat, whether it is red meat or eggs or even milk for that matter. And those are invisible fats. And therefore, we are not conscious of consuming that kind of fat. While visible fats are those like butter, ghee, oil, which we are using in our cooking and in our food preparation. And therefore, we can have a look at it and we know how much we are consuming.
Yeah. So, how much fat can we take daily as per the adult recommendation?
Yes. So, when it comes to visible fat, that means the fat that you're using in your cooking, the butter you're putting on the toast and all, it's about a total of 4 to 5 teaspoons per day per person. And if you, translate this into a monthly consumption, so for each person, it would be about 150 teaspoons, which would be about 700 grams of oil or fat or ghee or butter, everything combined in the house. And therefore, we should avoid excesses because that would lead to atherosclerosis for deposition of fat in the arteries, increase our risk of heart disease. But I would also suggest that, undue restriction of fat in children is not desirable because children need a lot of energy. Their energy intakes are very high, requirements are very high, and therefore they need some amount of energy coming from fat.
Now the issue is there are so many varieties of fat available in the market, and is it necessary to consume a combination of different kind of fats in our daily diet?
Yes, that's very important because various different fats and oils contain different types of essential fatty acids which are needed by our body, and therefore for an ideal combination we should combine or rotate our fats and oils every day. So like mustard oil, sunflower oil, ghee, butter. Traditionally in our country, we would be cooking some foods in mustard oil, some foods in vegetable oil, some, on the chapati we would put ghee, we would put in the dal we would use ghee. So that is a very good practice.
What are the recommendation? What are the recommended oil combination in Indian diets?
Well, ICMR has suggested some combinations so that we get an ideal proportion of these fatty acids, and some of these are either groundnut or sesame with mustard, soya bean, canola, or safflower, sunflower with groundnut. So as you know now in the market, many of these blends are available. So either we can choose a blend like that or we can use a combination of these at home.
I think the basic purpose is through oil we also consume the essential fatty acid.
Yes.
And none of the oil available in the market has a complete range of essential fatty acids.
Absolutely right.
So this is the reason we need to mix or use the combination of oil to consume different varieties of essential fatty acid for our body.
Very right, absolutely right. And my suggestion is that if you cannot use these blends, then maybe every time you buy the oil for household consumption, you can buy a different variety of oil.
It is often recommended that we should not allow the oil to be heated for a long time. Why is this? Does it have an impact on our health?
Yes, because when you heat oil for a long time, or I would say at very high temperature, the fatty acids get converted from a cis to a trans form. And the trans fatty acids then tend to damage your arteries and increase the risk of heart disease. And therefore, to avoid this, we should not reuse our oil for heating, especially for frying. Indians are very fond of frying. So we have very high temperature where the oil is heated, and this should be avoided. So if we have used the oil for frying, please do not use it again and again for frying. That same oil can be retained and used in your daily cooking. And every time that you're frying, you use a fresh oil. Now, these trans fats are also found in hydrogenated fats or your vanaspati. And therefore, these are also foods made out of vanaspati, or hydrogenated fats are harmful.
So, madam, if I understand you correctly, the trans fat is not good for health.
Yes.
And this is the reason we should avoid the excessive heating or repeated heating of the oil, particularly when we cook the food or fry the food. So what are the common sources of the trans fat available in our diets?
So like I said that, if you are repeatedly frying, then the fat it will contain trans fats. And so obviously when the shopkeepers or the halwais or the local street food vendors, when they are frying, they're going to keep reusing the oil. And that is so those fried snacks would be very high in trans fats. And also where vanaspati is used or hydrogenated fat is used, like in bakery products, in processed foods like your matri and kachori and even namkeens that we get in the market, we have to be very cautious about which sources we are using. And generally, if it's packaged, the label will always give how much trans fat there is.
Is it also recommended to use added sugar in moderate amount in our diets? Or if it is, then why it should be done?
Yes. So besides fat, sugar is another thing we need to be cautious about. And high quantities of sugar are just providing empty calories. And when I mean sugar, I also mean sugar, honey, jaggery and all. And they all lead to obesity. And obesity is a risk factor for so many other diseases. And in children, it can lead to a high incidence of dental caries. And therefore, we need to restrict the sugar.
When we talk about this sugar, and often it is term is understanding as a diabetes. Often this word is understand as a synonym of diabetes mellitus also. But sugar as such, which are these sugar are safer to consume for our body?
See, many foods like fruits and milk will naturally contain sugar. So these are healthier foods, so we need to consume them. But we must remember that all kinds of sugar are harmful. So jaggery, some people say they use jaggery instead of sugar, but yes, jaggery is a source of iron, but it still contains the same empty calories. And we of course need to avoid processed foods which are rich in sugar, like your aerated beverages, your sugary beverages, soft drinks, coffee, tea. People drink a lot of that and you don't realize how unconsciously you are adding sugar to your diet. And incidentally, just to tell people how much sugar we consume, 1 can of a soft drink may contain 8 teaspoons of sugar. And ketchup, which doesn't seem like a sweet food, 1 tablespoon of ketchup contains about 1 teaspoon of sugar. So if you're having say 3 or 4 tablespoons of ketchup with your samosa or your sandwich, you are consuming 4 to 5 teaspoons of sugar, which is really your daily intake requirement.
So, ma'am, what is the requirement of direct sugar consumptions?
WHO has recommended 20 to 25 grams per day for normal healthy adults from all sources of sugar like sugar, honey, jaggery and all. To prevent NCDs, they are recommending a lower intake of sugar.
Is there anything else in the diet that you would like to recommend for our learners?
Yes, very important is the fluid intake. So one should consume about 8 to 10 glasses of water of fluids every day, which works out to be about 1.5 liters of fluid. Now this fluid can be in the form of water, it could be milk, tea, lassi, juices, soups, etc. But as I said, excessive tea and coffee consumption is not recommended. Avoid sweetened, aerated beverages, energy drinks, diet colas. And instead of the aerated drinks, it's better to have something like coconut water or even unsweetened fruit juices, natural fruit juices.
We have learned something about what to eat and what not to eat, and the recommendations also we have learned. But here, what is the mindless eating, which is very prevalent in these days, particularly in this modern lifestyle people are using? So, what is basically the mindless eating?
Mindless eating is when you are not conscious. It's an eating behavior where you are eating, but you are unaware of the quantity being eaten or even the fact that you're eating it. And it generally happens when you're doing 2 things at a time. For example, watching TV and eating. So I know people who can consume a whole packet of chips while watching TV and you don't even realize it. Or when you go to a movie hall and you have these huge packets of popcorn and you're not really hungry, but you are just munching away because you're so engrossed in the movie. Even in office, if you're working on the computer and you have some food along with it, whether it's a snack, whether it's a chocolate or a candy, you really consume it without even being conscious of it. That is what is mindless eating. And this is one of the biggest culprits for our faulty diets today.
Why do we eat more than we think? Why it is happening? Because if we eat more, then obviously it is not good for health. We know it, but why do we eat more?
I'm sure all of you will agree that most of us don't even overeat because we are hungry. We overeat because we are sitting with family and friends. We overeat because we go to a restaurant, we see the labels, we are attracted to a particular food, the smell of, you have smell of hot samosas being fried or pakoras being fried, you want to eat it. So there are so many distractions which would promote us to eat. And you know that on an average, a human being makes 250 decisions about food every day. And we are not even conscious of that. Maybe 200 decisions or so, we really don't know why. So whether should we eat breakfast or not eat breakfast? Should we, put salt on a food or not on the food? Should we go out for dinner or not for dinner? Or should we have rice or roti? So many things come to our mind which we are not even conscious about. Should I have that extra half paratha or not? And that is what contributes to mindless eating. And another interesting fact which is being researched is that our stomach understands only 3 settings. We are full, we are starving, or we can eat a little bit more. And most of the time when you're offered food, you're neither hungry nor you're full, but because it's put in front of you, you are consuming it. And that is a major culprit of mindless eating.
Here the mindless eating is one of the very threat to the society, and particularly the obesity is also maybe linked with this,
Yes.
as well as many other non-communicable diseases also. So now the question is, since as you said that there are around 250 decisions we made unconsciously without realizing it, so how can we avoid those mindless eating?
See, the first thing is we have to avoid distractions. So this concept of sitting in front of the TV and eating, we need to avoid. We need to slow down. We need to be conscious of the food. We need to be enjoying the food, chewing it well, savor the flavor, the aroma, the taste of them. We need to take smaller bites, pause between bites, and chew your food well. Now, actually what happens, it takes about 20 minutes for your body to signal that your stomach is full. So if you're chewing your food and you're taking time while eating, you will get the signal when your stomach is full. But if you're eating hurriedly, you have overeaten and then you get the signal that the stomach is full. And by then you have eaten excess. So at the end of it, I would say that for healthy eating, the mantra is balance, variety and moderation in whatever food you are eating.
This is very true that we have to make many conscious decisions to avoid the mindless eating. So, is there any other reason why we eat more? Poor proportion of control within us?
One another big contributory factor to our eating excessive is poor portion control. And I'm sure you all have seen it that the size of food packaging and the portion sizes has increased over the past 30 years. So earlier, you used to get a small packet of popcorn when you went to a cinema hall. Today, you have a half a kg tub of popcorn and maybe one single individual can finish it. So even a cola bottle, we used to have 150, 200 ml cola bottles. Today we have 500 ml to 1 liter cola bottles. And everything has increased in size, the food servings. And when the packages are doubled in size, the consumption increases by 18 to 25% for meals and 30 to 45% for snacks. And you know, the snacks are mainly the high fat, sugar, salt kind of snacks, which are really not desirable. And if we increase the consumption by 45%, you can imagine how much extra calories and fat and sugar that we are consuming.
In this context, are there any change in the dietary pattern and requirement for a child also? Because the same child is growing and will become adult tomorrow. So we also need some kind of dietary pattern and requirement for a child also.
Yes.
So what are the changes you recommend?
See, childhood is a growth phase. And right from birth, the child is really growing very rapidly. And if we do not adopt healthy eating practices right from then, obesity, can start from that age group. So right from the beginning, as soon as the child is born, for the first 6 months, there should be exclusive breastfeeding. No other food should be given. And till 2 years of age, this breastfeeding should be continued. But homemade, semi-solid, complementary foods should be started at 6 months of age, so that by 2 years of age, the child should be eating what is cooked in the family, except that no spices, no fried foods, no strongly flavored food should be included. For school-going children, I would suggest that diets should be less bulky because they are very high in activity. It's also a growth phase, so their needs are very high. So their needs of energy, protein, vitamins, minerals are very high. We need to include milk and milk products. We need to include protein sources like animal foods and dals, green leafy vegetables, millets, which are nutritious in the diet. We also need to restrict the sugar and fat. So we don't need to avoid them completely, but definitely restrict the quantity. And because the needs are very high during childhood, they cannot eat that kind of quantity of food in every meal. So you have to have breakfast, lunch, dinner, 3 meals, but also have in-between snacks, which are nutritious and healthy.
In the same pattern, are there any changes in the dietary pattern and requirement for an adolescent also?
Yes. Adolescence is the next growth spurt after infancy. So again, it's a period of rapid growth and also hormonal changes. And therefore, the requirements of nutrients are very high. Particularly, the bones are growing in length. And therefore, calcium becomes very important for achieving peak bone mass, calcium and vitamin D, of course. Besides that, even nutrient-dense foods like marine fish, nuts and oil seeds should be there, flaxseed, fenugreek seeds. These are all nutritious foods. For girls specifically, iron becomes very important because it's the onset of menstruation. And iron-rich foods should be eaten. Now, adolescence is generally a period of high stress in studies, in profession, and more of a restricted lifestyle. So we need to avoid unhealthy eating habits, snacking, smoking, alcohol also should be avoided. Avoid packaged foods which are high in sugar, salt, added colors and additives. And along with this, besides the studies and the indoor lifestyle, we must encourage outdoor activity. So games, sports, healthy lifestyle is very, very important for an adolescent, along with the diet.
As our society get evolved, total number of the older person in our society are also increasing. So are there any changes in the dietary pattern and requirement for an older person?
Yes. You see, as we grow older, our energy needs decrease because our physical activity decreases. Also, the percentage of muscle in our body decreases and the fat increases. So, the energy needs are reduced. Unfortunately, many elderly do not reduce their food intake and therefore obesity sets in. Besides that, there are many physiological changes, in digestion, absorption of food. There's poor smell, poor taste sensation, loss of teeth, and all this affects the food intake. So what happens is that we need to provide them with small, frequent meals because their stomach size has shrunk and they cannot eat large amounts of food at one time. Besides that, to handle their digestive capacity, Avoid fried foods, rich foods, very spicy foods that may aggravate digestive problems in them. Fiber is very important because many of them suffer from constipation. If the person, most elderly will have some other disorder like diabetes or hypertension and all, and that would impose further dietary restrictions. Ultra processed food intake has to be reduced. The salt, sugar intake and fat intake has to be reduced. And of course, a healthy lifestyle. So even an older person should do some physical activity, whether it's walking, some aerobic exercise, as well as some resistance exercise, like even just picking up weights or, a water bottle at home and walking with it, or raising your arms and all, or some yoga. This will help to prevent obesity and NCDs.
This is always recommended that we eat local and seasonal foods. Do you think this is beneficial? Should we not look for more healthy options even if there are not available locally?
Well, I don't agree to that looking for options if they're not available locally, because eating local and seasonal food means buying food or choosing food that is grown in your region. It is currently in season, so it will be more fresh, more nutritious, and of course you're helping the local economy, you're helping sustainability, the environmental impact on food transportation. But besides that, in terms of nutrition, what becomes very important is that the taste is much better of locally available foods and the nutrient density is much better. And I'll give you an example. I always say we buy blueberries which are imported from, say, America, and we have in India, we have the phalsa and we have the ber, which is grown, I think, in nearly every village in North India and many other parts of India, which is much more nutritious because it's fresh and it provides a similar kind of phytochemicals. But, one has a prestige value and the other one we are forgetting. We are forgetting local berries, local seeds, local fruits and vegetables. Every region of our country has a very rich diversity, which we should adopt. And this will not only support the local consumer, the local farmers, it will also promote them or encourage them to grow these more. And this will reduce the environmental impact, the low carbon emissions will decrease, less chemicals and preservatives will be used for storage. So many of you may not realize, but the shiny apples that we are getting in the market are coated with wax to not only preserve them, but that wax then is what we are ingesting. And that is very harmful. And of course, like I said, with the kind of variety we have in our local produce, we are promoting food diversity in our diets, and that is very advantageous.
I think in this context, the gut microbiome is also one of the very important factor to regulate our nutrition within the body, particularly when we consume the local food and seasonal food available nearby us. So this is very important. I think we should focus on more local food and which is available different kind of food in different seasons. What are the advantages of traditional Indian diets? This is very important to understand because the amount of the food we are consuming these days, which is imported from the outside of the country, it may be due to the many market-driven force or some other force, but we need to understand the advantages of the traditional Indian food. And madam, please explain us what are the advantages of traditional Indian diets.
It's, with globalization, as you said, we are moving away from traditional Indian diets, and many youngsters are now adopting a Western way of eating. But our traditional Indian diets are very, very healthy, and you will find that in many Western countries, they are going back to being vegetarian, vegan, adopting Indian type of traditional diets. So our traditional Indian diets are very nutrient dense. So we have millets, we have whole grains, we have vegetables, and these promote good gut health, as you mentioned, and good digestion. They are also rich in antioxidants and phytochemicals. So examples I'm giving you are like turmeric. haldi wala doodh became so popular during COVID because of its anti-infective properties that it has. So turmeric, ginger, cloves, we have a rich history of spices and use of spices which are very, very healthy. Besides that, our traditional Indian diets are focused on plant foods. And this we know has been established to reduce the risk of certain chronic diseases. We have a wide diversity. Biodiversity is very, very high, and therefore we have various, even green leafy vegetables in every region differs. And therefore we have a very wide variety to consume from. Seasonally also we have different varieties of foods, and therefore it promotes freshness and stability. And of course, with the rich Ayurvedic history that we have, our traditional diets are often aligned with Ayurvedic principles of healthy eating. And therefore, they are very, very beneficial to us.
There are different opinions regarding these traditional Indian diets. So, question is, are there also some disadvantages of the traditional Indian diets?
Yes, of course. There are two sides of the coin. And unfortunately, our traditional Indian diet, some of them are very high in their fat content. Indians are very fond of fried foods, and therefore there's a lot of fat and oil which is used, which we need to be cautious about. A lot of sodium is there. Salt is there because we use salt as a preservative. So our papads, our pickles, our chutneys, they are very rich in sodium, and that is another nutrient we need to be cautious about. India is a vast country, so there will be regional disparities. Dietary customs will vary from state to state. I would say every 50 kilometers the customs vary. So that we need to look at carefully. We eat sweets at the drop of a hat, I would say. Like any function, any celebration, traditional sweets are there which are very high in calories, even fried foods. And many of our vegetarian diets, if we don't give careful thought to it, they may be lacking in protein. So we need to include milk and milk products, pulses and all in the diet so that adequate protein is provided. And because of our cultural practices of large portion sizes, of hospitality, of celebration, sometimes we go overboard on the amount of food we eat, and that becomes an issue.
I think in this context, I would like to add that particularly I am from the northeastern part of the country. So traditionally we consume many food which is boiled only without any oil. So most of our food consumptions in our day-to-day life are boiled in nature. So we do not put so much of oil, so much of salt, and we think that we are enjoying the real taste of the particular food, not the taste of any spices. So as you said, India is a very diverse in nature, so our food habit keep changing in different area, and that is very much true because like Kashmir, different kind of foods are eaten. In Tamil Nadu, we have a different varieties of food. Like in Gujarat, we have a different varieties of food, and northeastern region again different varieties of food. And this is some kind of subcontinent kind of things. So now, madam, as we are entering into the much more capitalistic approach, as we are moving towards the market-driven foods, and many foods are now available, which is prepared and made readily available for us. So how to read the different kind of label, particularly in the packages food or food item when we purchase it from the market, and how it is beneficial to us? Because as a aware customer, as a consumer, intelligent consumer, we need to know that different label has a different meaning and how to read about it so that it can be helpful for us.
Yes, that's very, very important because most of us are now buying a lot of packaged food. So if you look at the label which is on the front of the package, which the consumer sees the first when it's on a shelf, is called the front of package labeling. And on the front of the pack, you will definitely have the name of the food, which will be there. There would be a logo which says vegetarian or non-vegetarian. So it's a green dot for a vegetarian and a brown dot for a non-vegetarian. There's also, if there's any, fortified food symbol or, organic food symbol, that will also be displayed on the front of the pack. And you would also have a claim. You may or may not. So it may say fortified with vitamin A or D or good for the bones or something like that. So those claims are on the front of the pack. On the back of the pack, you would have the ingredient list, and the ingredient list is always in the descending order. So the maximum constituent will be first and the lowest constituent will be last. There will also be some disclaimers like free from arginine oil or contains artificial sweetener or something like that. There will also be the quantity, the packaging date, the MRP, the batch number. There would also be the FSSAI logo and a barcode which shows with a license number which shows that it has been approved or passed by FSSAI. And then you would also have the nutritional facts. And in the nutritional facts, it's mainly the energy, protein, not even protein, energy, protein, carbohydrate, sugar, cholesterol. If it's been fortified, there would be the nutrients, the fortified nutrient list also, and the details of the manufacturer, the distributor. So when I said FSSAI, if FSSAI is the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, which makes the regulation for what the packaged food should contain or what should be there on the label, and every food manufacturer has to follow the regulations. So these regulations were given by FSSAI.
So, madam, the issue is how to find a good food, particularly before the expiry. And there are many packets, it is clearly written that the expiry of this food is this date, or best before expiry, or best before this date. Particularly even bread, milk, and many other food, this kind of words are written. So how to read about those kind of labels?
So yes, I would like to clarify that there is a difference between best before and expiry date. So best before date is the date till which the product is at the best quality. So it doesn't mean that the product is unsafe to eat after this date. So suppose the bread has a best before date. If you consume it 2 days later, it may not be the ideal quality, but it's not unsafe to eat. And the product can remain still of good quality. But expiry date is the date at which a product cannot be eaten after that. It is unsafe to eat. And therefore, there may be health risks. So like if you have canned products, fruit juices and all, they would have an expiry date. And then, of course, they would also have some list of food additives. And in these also, there are some permitted and some not permitted. So, of course, if they're declaring it, most food manufacturers will only declare the permitted ones. And as I mentioned earlier, the ingredients are listed in the maximum to the least amount.
So, I think there are many country has its own regulations, and since globalization has increased, we are exporting many food, and in the same time we are importing many different varieties of food from the different country also. So there must be some kind of mandatory regulation as FSSAI has given, and what about those kind of mandatory regulations about the packaged food particularly?
So all these things about the label that I've discussed with you are mandatory. This is compulsory. Besides that, some specific declarations have to be done. So declarations like contains added caffeine, like I mentioned, coated with wax, for example, on apples and all. Or you might have seen chewing of pan masala is injurious to health. So it contains, aspartame or some kind of artificial sweetener, or not recommended for children. So these are like, it's processed in a plant where gluten is used, because gluten some people are allergic to, allergen informations. These are mandatory declarations according to FSSAI. And you will always find these on related products.
Like in some kind of food, there may be exclaimer that this has a content of the peanut butter,
Yes.
because many people, particularly in US and Europe, having allergic to the peanut butter.
Yes.
It is not very prevalent in India, but US and other European.
But in India also they will write contains tree nuts, oblique gluten, oblique whatever. You know.
So I think as a conscious consumer, we need to read all these label before we consume. And best thing is, as much as we avoid the packaged food.
Yes, very true. We should restrict our consumption of packaged food. I know it's very difficult to avoid in today's fast-paced life. Everybody's working, they don't have time. So many times you want to just open a packet and eat rather than cook food at home. But home cooking of food, or you eating fresh, local, seasonal, would be the best.
So thank you for useful insight on the common yet topic which is very important. So we have learned today the importance of healthy eating to protect ourselves from non-communicable diseases, consuming good amount of fruits and vegetables, restricting fat, especially trans fat, and reducing intake of sugar is the key to the healthy lifestyle. We must also not forget to drink 8 to 10 glass of water daily. What you like to add something else as message to the student?
Yes, so like I said, we prefer healthy, traditional, homemade food. As I said, our changes in lifestyle, we cannot avoid ready-to-eat and convenience foods, but we should try and consume as much healthy, traditional, homemade food. The processed foods are refined, they are calorie dense, they are rich in fat or in salt and sugar, and therefore we should use traditional foods in a combination. So whether it's cereals or millets, there's a lot of talk about millets. So it's not necessary to completely replace wheat with millets, but definitely 2 to 3 times a week we could do that. We have a very rich repertoire of spices and herbs, which we must make full use of in our diets. We should, however, like I mentioned, avoid our high fat traditional foods like our halwas and bhaturas and kachoris and pickles and papas, and healthy cooking methods. You know, using the tandoor or dry heat is a very healthy method. And as you mentioned, in the Northeast, you steam. You know, everybody is eating momos today. But unfortunately, we're having fried momos in Delhi. So the steaming, the boiling, the tandoor and the dry heat methods are much, much more healthier as compared to other methods. So please consume simple, traditional, nutritious dishes.
So, madam, thank you very much for teaching us so much important topic, eating healthy, and what are to be eaten and what not to be eaten, as well as some kind of guideline what you have provided to us. I hope our students will be very much benefited by this discussion, and we are looking forward more learning in the area of non-communicable diseases. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.